Story.
We spend 500 billion every year to import food items into Kenya. We import maize, wheat, edible oil, rice, and all manner of things. And I have made the decision that we are going to invest in production. By next year, we will not be importing a grain of maize. We will move on to rice. We will move on to wheat. And in 5 years, the $1 billion we use to import edible oil, I want to make sure that sunflower, soya, canola, palm oil are all grown in Kenya, and we don't have to import again. Already, last year, we've started the journey on soya and sunflower. We are on course on canola. We've already gotten the seeds, and it is going to help us as a country reduce the foreign exchange that we use to import food when we can actually produce that food in Kenya.
All right, 1 billion shillings on importation of edible oils. Bill Okero, put it into perspective, all that we've had. So by next year also there'll be no importation of maize.
Yeah, it's like
even with the floods
it
that
reminds
now.
me of, like saying with my lips. But I think one of the challenges I think is true edible oils, like most of these other things, wheat and many other things, rice. We import substantial quantities of that. True. But I think there are two aspects of these things that we need to look at. One is the affordability to the consumer. That is critical, which was mentioned by Anthony earlier. That, look, we can produce something, anybody can produce something, but at what cost? That's where the issue is. So if you can get cooking oil or rice or whatever, we can produce any of the foods we need competitively in this country, cheaper, and then it will reduce the cost of living for the people. That's critical. But number two, I think the issue of I think no one has a dispute I think manufacturers are willing in Kenya, and we have made that clearly to the government. We would be happy if the government can facilitate the growth of all those seed oils in the country, seed crops in the country. That's why we're paying the 2% nuts and oil crops development levy, so that we can encourage our farmers to do that. And the manufacturers are available to process all that into oil. I think that there's no dispute on that. How long it will going to take is up to how the government will facilitate those who are interested in farming, because the question of land, the question of suitability of the climate, so many things have been looked at, and I think they have, subject to that, I'm sure investors will be available. But the thing is, in the interim, you do not introduce punitive taxes to kill manufacturing companies completely and render Kenyans unemployed. For example, this new tax, 25% on raw material levy, excess levy, and the 25% on the refined will raise the price of one 20-liter jerrycan, which is now 3,900, is going to go to 6,547. That's 80% almost increase. The 1 liter cooking oil, which is 300 shillings, will go to 550. And so the impact now on all the others, the soaps, the margarines, the everything else, because this is staple diet, will go up. Out of the price of that 6,547, 3,000 is taxes. It's going to be taxed. No, more than 3,000. 3,500 will be taxes actually. So this is crazy. So because what you are looking at is that there's no government in Africa that I know which focuses on taxing the staple diet of the people, food of people. In many countries around us, you go to Ethiopia, go to Egypt, these countries, staple food, government does not go into that area because the idea is let people have food. Look for tax on other things. You're removing taxes on helicopters, you're removing taxes on very other luxury things, but you're going to tax basic foods, breads and butter. I mean, you're making life very difficult. So I think clearly if the government does not stop some of these amendments regarding edible oils, there's no doubt that factories are going to shut down because the cash flow implications, the demand will go down. Nobody's going to buy. Who is going to buy 6,000 from 3,000 to 7,000 shillings? Nobody's going to buy. So the demand will go down. And what will happen to the industry? Because of lack of competitiveness, everybody will import. From Busia, everybody will import the cooking oil from Uganda because it will be half the price. They'll import from Uganda, Tanzania. So what you're trying to do is really kill industry when the stated policy of the government is to help, expand manufacturing and so forth. So for me, I think some of these measures are really retrogressive and they don't make sense.
Minister Sako, you want to comment on it?
When you listen to what Bilo is saying, you go back to this common sense issue that Chairman of NSE mentioned at the beginning. And yet that has been one area which has been highly targeted for import substitution. So I guess it's at what point you levy, what you levy it on, that can determine whether you are hurting the domestics or raising opportunities for domestics to grow within it. And hopefully you can get to a point where investors, local investors, find sufficient incentive you need to put in their money. Because if that doesn't happen, we are not going to get out of that trade trap that you just described.
Mm-hmm. Even if you stopped today importing the CPO, the crude palm oil, there is 25% excise duty on finished product. And there is still the eco levy you're talking about. So if you're a startup and you're thinking this is a business that you want to get, you disrupt the big guys so that you get in, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, but the
taxes, by the way, those taxes, those excise duties is applicable to all, local or whatever. It doesn't really matter whether you...
Yeah, it just raises the cost of living. That's what it does. But you want to look for a differential in which, in so doing, you provide a competitive edge to the domestics. That is the whole intent of an import substitution strategy. That's not going right, according to what you guys are saying. But we can't, with the climate advantage, ecological advantage we have gotten growing at, we can't just sit back and allow others to sort of bring in what we could do ourselves.
I think for me, Dibal, the president has made a broad statement of intent. He stated what he wants to do. I think the big question is how that will be achieved. We know very well that President Ruto is a very hard-working person. He himself is a passionate and active farmer. And farming is a topic that is very close to my heart. I think this is a statement that obviously means that there will be some interventions to make that a reality in terms of making our country a producer of these commodities that he has talked about. However, my problem is that we always are very good at speaking about these things, but we are very poor at actualizing them. And Mheshimiwa Sako here mentioned that it needs to be something that also gives capacity to our own local agricultural communities. And have we been successful at that endeavor? I would say hardly. I've argued many times about coffee, and I've been trying to get an appointment to meet the Deputy President to give him my opinion.
What about maize, sugar,
about maize? I come from there is no doubt that Kenya is endowed with everything that it needs to be a significant producer of these things that the President talks about. I do hope and pray that it will not be once again an opportunity to give our crown jewels to foreign investors coming into the country under the pretext of foreign investment, take our land and put up big projects at the expense of our local business and farming communities. I do not doubt that we can achieve what he says needs to be done. However, like Mheshimiwa Bilo says, everything is predicated upon our competitive and our comparative advantage. That is one of the fundamentals of good economics. Do you have the competitive advantage? Do you have the comparative advantage? Is it something that we should be doing? Do we have, has it been broadly analyzed? I don't doubt also that his economic advisory team must have looked at it and said, yeah, fine, we need to do this. But I'm be very curious to hear from the president how this will be achieved and the impact it will have to our local communities, and also to hear about the interventions with regard to the broader taxation issues. Will the products that come out end up being competitive and sitting on our shelves and earning its place of pride on our shelves and even as an exportable item? Or will it just be yet another lofty ideal that was not addressed? Let me just also say something about agriculture. I've always said agriculture is predicated upon the scientific intervention, the access to the resources that you need, the water and the technology. You go around this country. I come from the breadbasket district of county of Trans-Nzoia. There's zero extension services. There's zero investment in water resources. There's zero. Look at what happened the other day with Ministry of Agriculture and the fertilizer. We're just joking around as a country. If you go, I went to Israel once a few years ago, and I visited a farm in the Araba Desert it is the largest milk producing farm on the planet in terms of per capita. They have cows that produce 74 liters of milk per day in the desert. So nothing is impossible, but do we have the seriousness? That's the question I ask.
Should we drink that kind of milk, though?
You saw this clip that was circulating about Egypt.
Yes.
The production of rice, the production of wheat, the production of maize.
Fruits, everything.
Yeah. So we started, because of the challenge that we see in agriculture. So we came up with a pillar called Agriculture for Industry, because there is a big disparity. Farmers are here, they start farming with their eyes closed because they don't know who will buy the product. The agro-processors are here, you power your factory without knowing how your price will be, whether you're going to get access to raw materials. So we came and say, can we bring this information asymmetry, minimize? And we've started in the small value chain. And it's a very, very complex thing to organize these value chains. Because we are talking about value chains, but nobody's talking about the offtake. So has come on table and said, we have the offtake market. We want to see what is going on with the price. And for sunflower, the members have said, show us, where is it? We'll offtake 100%.
Yeah.
So even as we talk about sunflower, the market is ready, but where is it? The seeds that have been provided to that 5 counties, many of them are in stores. They're not on the ground. So we're saying, show us, where is it?
And it's all about the issue of agriculture, really the environment for agriculture in this country. That's why we have not been competitive. Even on maize, forget about other things. We've reached a point where we are importing vegetables, the onions, we're importing eggs from, because of the policy environment and many other factors which makes the cost of production in agriculture uncompetitive. You are a farmer, you hear it every day on news. Farmers finding it very difficult to make ends meet. The cost of finance is very high. The cost of fuel is high. Power is very expensive. You want to go into farming, everything becomes very difficult. And yet, consumers can get this thing cheaply across the border in Uganda and Tanzania. So I think it's easy for government to stand up there and say, we're going to do this. But this is hot air, let me tell you. It's plain hot air. We have capacity for edible oil of 2 million metric tons, the 13 factories we have here in this country, 2 million. Our consumption is only 800,000 metric tons annually. If we have sunflower, if we have all those seed crops here, it will be taken, all of it, the offtake is 100%. Nobody will import from those countries. But these things have been discussed in terms of the environment, whether you need all those people, the government support. Before BIDCO went to Uganda for the palm oil, they told the government, give us land. We want to do it here. Kenya government was not willing to do it. There's no land.
Yeah.
Yes, 20 years ago. That's how BIDCO ended up doing it in Uganda. So, yes, it's easy to say, yes, we need to, but people want to know, for you to do that 800,000 metric tons of oil, you need millions of acres of land for those crops. But it's not just having the acres of land, but people want to see whether they can make ends meet. Is it competitive? If it's not, then what value is it going to add? So I think it's so you don't just disrupt things, come up with laws and say, I'm putting these punitive measures because I want to stop this. First get those things off the ground and see. And people will buy, then you can now say, okay, guys, let us do everything internally. I think there's need to focus on agriculture, and that is the weakest link in this country. We cannot put bread, we can't grow wheat, we can't grow maize. You have problems with sugar industry. Every agricultural sector we have in challenge. Coffee, tea.
Coffee, we are 10 times less than Uganda.
Less than Uganda. So you now talk of other things,
from Egypt.
canolas and other things. I think we are joking.
We make comparisons with Egypt many times, but let us remember their farming system is completely different from ours. Egypt is entirely irrigated, and it's irrigated on the Nile waters that are highly managed and regulated. So you can't, in a season when everybody's growing sunflower in your area, not going to be growing maize, no. So they tend to, they're better organized in the way that the farming system is managed. And then the buyers also know when the crop will be offset onto the market. There are things we used to do here also that are no longer done. We're not investing in the organization of the farming organization, as it were, the extension services, the link with the marketing, and then the buyers also would consequently, hopefully, be organized on their side. So there are a few things to be done beyond the understanding of the broad parameters of where you want to go that we cannot ignore. I am conscious of the fact that to get an extension person, now as a farmer, I'm a small-scale farmer, who has a vehicle. I have to send my driver, go pick the guy or woman, the man or woman from their office, and take them to the shamba, and we'll take them back.
You're lucky they're there.
And
This is the agriculture extension officers.
Yes, and you're going to buy lunch as part of that process. And they say the only time they go out is for project-funded activities. And by project-funded, donor, they're looking for activities with the foreign donor. That has fallen between the cracks, and they really need to work on it. I hear that. But
at least yours is project-funded as well.
No,
I'm just saying with the incentives that you give as well.
Yes. It's virtually project-funded because we need support on livestock, for example. I need support, somewhere on the farm we have a pest or this. To get them from their offices is quite. So those are aspects we have to look at. But I think on the other hand, also then the producer, the processors, probably better organization on the processor side is also going to be needed. They have to invest a little deeper into the marketing chain.
I mean, the processors, peanuts. The processors are importing peanuts from Argentina, Brazil.
Yes.
Maize from. The thing is this: if you go to Migori,
but just stick with that.
I'm getting there.
Yeah,
I'm getting there.
Yeah, let's have a conversation on that.
So, peanut business value chain is a small value chain, but it's 5 billion shillings. We import 90% from Malawi, Argentina. Actually, Malawi is 90%. Argentina, Brazil, India. If you go to Homa Bay and you go to Migori, and you visit someone, they give you a gorogoro of peanut to go eat it on your way. But there is no industrial peanut. So what you've done is to bring the governor on the table, agro processors on the table. We start organizing the farmers in Homa Bay. And now they're planting peanuts. Leather, which has a big opportunity. This Dagoretti market here, slaughter 700 cows a day. You get zero raw material from there.
Yeah.
We go and tell the Ministry of Livestock, you have a whole department of DVS who are in charge of that.
Yeah.
Our people cannot go there because of cartels that are operating in the market. Now, instead of us looking at how we boost that kind of economy on leather, that affects almost 2/3 of the country, or even more. What would we do is to actually drop the export levy that was supposed to keep the materials in-house. If you go to Mombasa, the smuggling of hides is big time. You go to our processors here for leather, they don't have hides from cows. Now we're using sheepskin. But the raw materials are there. But this bill has nothing to do with that economy, which can create 100,000 jobs.
All right.
Micro
Actually,
and small
I
scale.
did visit an industry down on Mombasa Road that does leather processing, and I looked at the leather quality from Rwanda vis-a-vis our own leather quality from Kenya, and there was a big problem. In fact, we were with some people from the Chamber of Commerce from the Northeastern who are looking at how they can become suppliers of raw materials. Again, those are industries that are a no-brainer. We can develop those industries overnight. Look
Yeah, so it's one of
what
our highest value chain.
Ethiopia has done with their leather value chain. Look what Ethiopia and Uganda have done with their coffee value chain. So in Kenya, what we've done on coffee, and it's very, very unfortunate, we've gone into the politics of market access before we've dealt with the issue of production. The average farmer in Kenya is producing 1 or 2 kilos per tree. The average farmer in Colombia is doing 15 or 20 kilos per tree. It's all agronomy. It's common sense. So if it was my decision, and I've been meaning to meet the deputy president, tell him, if we were serious, let's ramp up our production fivefold. That can be done without increasing a single acre in this country. We just need to do the agronomy right. We need to have access to water resources. In many parts of Western Kenya, Mheshimiwa, we don't have a problem with water. We just don't harvest it. Simply don't harvest it. I mean, in Trans Nzoia, where I come from, we are dealing with 1,800 to 2,200 millimeters per annum. I took some friends of mine from Israel there, and they laughed. They said, "You guys are just playing." I mean, you go there from December to March. The place is so dry that trees are drying up. Yet the rest of the year we had flooding all over the place. So I mean, even your county of Busia, I mean, I think a lot can be done with that flooding situation.
Sure.
I mean, if the Dutch have been able to
reclaim land,
reclaim the sea, I don't think the Budalangi should be underwater every year.
But also, if Chiranganya could let us have our upstream dams.
The average production of maize in Trans Nzoia, which is a bread basket, it's about how many? 8 bags per acre?
No.
Ethiopia,
it's higher than that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying it's an average farm.
Yeah. What's happening in the bread baskets, of course, is that there's no science, there's no agronomical intervention. So the soil health. You see, don't forget that when Kenya became a colony in 1920, the British were farming in Trans Nzoia. So on most of the farms in Trans Nzoia, the lands have been used for 100 years with the same application of diammonium phosphates and calcium and ammonium nitrates over 100 years. So the average acidity or the pH value of the soils is quite high. And the high pH value compromises productivity.
All right, talking of pH and fertilizer and the floods as well, and the reality that the president says we will not import maize next year. Is this just a broadside declaration? And
next year,
what is the reality?
We should be producing now. But we are dealing with the fertilizer.
No, but I think you had the sentiments of the farmers that last week, because of the lack of the fertilizer, the top dredging and so forth, they sounded alarm that we are not likely to get that kind of harvest that we had.
I was speaking to some traders.
So there'll be no harvest. We still will import.
So if there's no consistency,
we'll play that clip next year. For the president.
And really, I mean, it's a shame that our investigative agencies have not told us conclusively who was behind that heinous act of compromised quality fertilizer. You know, giving a peasant farmer compromised fertilizer is literally the most evil thing that you can do. And I'm sure in other jurisdictions that person would have faced far worse consequences.
But the president also indicated that with the diasporans there, he indicated that that matter has been done and dealt with. The people who are concerned, of course, the NCPB officials, they're in the slummers right now. So, and he moved on because I think there was a farmer who raised the question of he is actually farming in Narok, and he had brought 100. He was given 100 bags of fertilizer, which were actually compromised, and he was seeking the compensation bit of it. And so the president was very categorical that has been dealt with. The people in the slummers are there, and we move on as a country.
Oh no, but of course, let's be fair on that. He didn't have to say what the rest of it has been. The guys have entered the judicial process. Whatever comes out of that, let's hope because they also have a defense. They may have a defense. They may win in courts. It's also possible. But do nothing, I think, is the worst thing that you can do. There must be farm action.
Yeah, but farmers want compensation.
He indicated that they will be
compensation,
compensated.
yes, absolutely.
They want
absolutely.
They will be compensated.
Absolutely.
But the potential for Kenya to become a great agricultural country still remains. I think all the basic factors are in place. I think it's just a question of us actually getting some serious intervention there.
Right.
That's serious intervention.
By remote control, by any chance?
Or leadership.
The clips, because the
serious
picks on fertilizer when you're picking of it.
Yes. As he speaks,
As you speak. Yeah, they're on it. They're listening. They're listening to what you're saying.
The clips keep coming back.
Our production team is doing a great job with our producer Lydia there and our director Mark as well. Right, we want to focus also now, looking at all these conversations and what we were talking here, the East African had this particular publication this week headlining about the China back as Kenya, Uganda, SGR Financial. And CS Kipchumba Murkomen says they have secured commitment from the Exim Bank. The partners want more loans to take the line to DRC. It sounds now these wagons, they'll be carrying nothing from production side of it from me in the country, because now what will they be carrying to this other region? There's no maize. There's nothing coming from the farms. Yes, we have wagons now. Yes,
no edible oils.
No edible oils.
Cheaper to import directly packed ones for those countries than to import from there.
There's a joke that is told that Kenya is busy opening up, new markets. We have EU market now, 27 countries, $16 trillion. We have American market opening. We have AFCFTA. We have COMESA. So the marketing department in the factory is super active, but the production floor is closed.
It's closed. What will we be faring?
Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah, you want to comment on that?
So we were making that joke. We have the PS for trade, who is opening up the market, and we have PS for industry. Say you are very active, but PS industry.
But speak to the reality of this, because I think also this has been a long drawn battle. People are questioning. Okay, we have the railway to nowhere. All right, so finally, at least there's something, but there's nothing to carry.
I think what has happened in our recent history, we took our eyes off agriculture with the consistency it does require. Anthony, you're talking about imports from Argentina, peanuts or something, and Brazil, whatever you look at from Brazil. These are countries that have kept agriculture at the center stage, but not always for the good reasons that we would support all over. The levels of subsidies are high, but also the types of investment are targeted. Transport and connectivity to transport, incentives to factories, incentives to farmers. The only thing that restrains them is the EU rules on subsidy and selective American arguments also against subsidies if you're competing with their farmers. You have to keep your eyes onto it. You can't let your eyes off. That might include support programs that should go in with a clear purpose of what outcomes you want. You want raw material for your processors, for example. You want decent incomes for your farmer. There may be many things you're looking at. We should never take our eyes off of that. We did take our eyes off, and we sat there impressed by the gigantism of the things that were being done, including our infrastructure, which we really do require. Kiprona is here. He will tell you about Tanzania. It's one of the countries with very difficult feeder road networks. Almost, when it rains, you can't move in many parts. They have a few, tarmac roads that go to Ndebes, go to Cherangany, but you try and get off those roads on a rainy day, you're in deep trouble. To the extent where I think growing maize now, people have, sadly, people have gone to growing sugarcane.
They're drying the maize on the roads.
Yeah, and they drive. Yes. Anyway, so we need a consistent policy and approach to this.
Maybe just to also add, I completely concur with what Sako Binyase said. We also need to look at incremental research. The countries like Argentina, the Latin American countries that he's just mentioned, they do a lot of incremental research, their own homegrown research. I think there's an element of academic laziness in the part of Kenya from a research and development point of view, in the sense that we don't even produce our own breeds. We don't look at the I mean, a company like Kenya Seed, which today should be a Pan-African, even a global player in terms of seed multiplication, is sitting there, under government control, growing at a very slow pace. Kenya Seed 20 years ago was probably the same size as Seedco of Zimbabwe, which is today listed in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and is a huge Pan-African seed multiplier. So I think that there's so many aspects of it. There's research and development that we need to look at. We need to look at market access. We need to look at post-harvest. We need to look at technical know-how. We need to look at the linkages to markets and etc. So as agriculture has huge potential, and it is an untapped potential at this moment in time.
And as you say, just a quick one, coffee. In the 70s, Kenya was at the forefront of research in coffee. I led some teams some 30 years ago or more, early 80s, that's 40 now, and I had this Brazilian boss of the Brazilian Coffee Research Institute. And he had spent time in Kenya. They all had come to Kenya to learn what the Kenyans were doing in coffee research. Those were the days that took our coffee to the Far East, to Papua New Guinea, and we provided technical support to the Brazilians. Now, of course, we took money away from that research, and we are falling back. But we had the capacity. The quantum was not that huge relative to GDP. It was probably significant against GDP, but it was not anything to write home about. But we did really, really high and valuable research. What we do not want to admit, and we should admit this, is then that real estate moved in, talk about areas around central Kenya, and took over the farms. We can't compete. The only thing that can compete with the real estate is going to be weed. What do you call that? Bangi. That's the only thing that will earn you more than real estate. But anything else won't. So here we are. Kiambu has been, completely decimated in terms of its contribution to this. I don't know, nearly to some extent. But there are new areas here, as you have mentioned, where you can now then move coffee into, where you don't have that competition. You need a policy system that now helps the new entrepreneurs there to now grow, get into coffee, and not keep wasting money and giving subsidies in the old areas of coffee. They're not going to go back to coffee. They're not going to go back.
I'm surprised that you must also have some selfish national policies. I mean, if you look at the countries that have become great agricultural producers, even France today, I mean, when the French producers come into the market, they shut their import window. They no longer produce. It doesn't matter about the quality. I mean, Kenya is a major exporter of, say, French beans to France. We go to the market of Rungis in Paris. Any time that the French start producing, which they are doing now, because it's going into summer, they will shut the doors. And they will reduce the quotas from imports. So you see, you need to have also an element of selfish policies, notwithstanding the trade, bilateral and multilateral trade arrangements, that protects. There has to be an aspect of protectionism to make agriculture work.
Strategic
protectionism.
Bilo wanted to comment on the issue of the foreign direct investment that you had actually raised.
You see but also on this issue, most of these countries that are very successful in agriculture, it's because of the incentives they give to their farmers, which includes subsidies. It's not just giving people fertilizers, but I think there must be deliberate, strategic, interventions so that to encourage people to go into agriculture. Because there is no way you will go into production of poultry if there are no incentives, and it's going to be very expensive for you, and somebody else is going to import this eggs from another country that will be cheaper. And so because our cost of production has become very expensive, people have moved out of agriculture. That's why there's no more coffee is going down, tea, all sectors are going down, and they're not expanding in terms of the acreage or in terms of the production. So I think deliberately we need to. But when we now start creating a situation like this finance bill, you're doing the opposite. You're making it more expensive, for people to go into production, to productive activity. Everybody starts lining up for government contracts, which you will not be paid. Now on the investments, one of the things that I have seen with this administration is that we have is the trips. The trips that are being made outside the country to look for investors. I mean, last year was amazing. I mean, you've seen how many trips the government officials have made across the country, including even now. But the thing is, what is the outcome? You have gone out there to look for investors. A lot of people came here from different countries, presidents and prime ministers and businesses. I remember one delegation from Saudi was, we were told the worth of that delegation was in terms of trillions. We were told by the government minister from Qatar and from everywhere. So then at the end of the day, what is the outcome? Where are the investments? Who's gone into manufacturing? Have we seen companies that have started making, put 5 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion shillings into this? So, so then the question is why? And that is the question that this gentle, distinguished people have been talking about, and these institutions that they represent have been talking about, is the business environment. You have to deal with the business environment. Make it attractive. You don't even need to travel. People will know and they will come. But if you don't deal with that environment, you're not dealing with corruption, you're not dealing with power, which is very expensive, you're not dealing with water problems, you're not dealing with the tax regime, then you go out there and tell our country is like this, nobody will come. You will travel, you'll make 5 years, you'll go around the country, the world, but nobody will come. Yeah.
Right. I wanted to, I'll be remiss if we don't also talk about, just briefly, because I can see time is not really on our side, on the infrastructure market and the housing levy issue that is being raised, that will be the housing levy revenue will actually be, the housing levy itself, the revenue will be invested in the infrastructure bonds market. What is your reaction on that particular development, first of all?
What struck me when I saw that was putting money, having money lie wherever it was, putting money in these bonds, any money is a good thing. But the problem I had there was, this is specific money raised for a specific purpose.
Indeed.
If you see the money moving out into let's say, a general investment, that must mean there is a constriction, there is a problem in the investment that had been intended. I read through the article quickly, rather selective but quickly. I think I got the gist of it. I didn't get a sense of a discussion what it is that is not happening, that is leading them to put the money now to sit to sit in T-bonds. We need an active capital market, there's no question about that, wherever it goes. But you see some of the problems that we have been having even before in banks. They say instead of lending out to agriculture, lending out to other sectors, the risks are high, so what do? You can easily put the money in, say, in government paper, let's put it generally speaking. And it earns you money, but it doesn't do the purpose that you intended to have. I am a big advocate of being an economy in which housing is adequate and in which people don't move into cardboards. That's not how human beings should live. But we must be able to deal with the system within housing to absorb. The absorptive capacity is there in a way that there are some fair returns. Or even if the returns are low comparatively, because the government wants to absorb that, to be able to house people whose payments will not give you a high return, that should be a deliberate policy. But as it is now, I think when I saw that, I said of the PS, who is a very knowledgeable man in that sector, who is there now, PS Hinga, maybe he should have issued a statement somewhere preceding that so that we do not push people around to collect the money and we only want to invest it in T-bonds.
Yeah, so everyone is wondering what was the tearing rush?
Bonds and T-bonds.
I find the housing levy, at a personal level, really a grab of my income because I pay a huge amount of it. I cannot benefit from it. And it's a tax actually. But this government papers is government borrowing from itself. It's government borrowing. It's taking money from me, then borrow it. It's very convoluted. Because how can government borrow from itself?
And yeah, of course, and that will come with an interest to give yourself.
Yeah, but the housing levy is a tax paid already to the government.
That's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, it's really tangled up.
It's a good thing for them to do that when they have a surplus, isn't it?
They don't have a surplus.
Construction has not begun.
It's not about a surplus.
They're sitting on money.
To me, that news item is a clear indication that there is an issue in that whole housing, affordable housing agenda. The fact that that surplus has built up means that the money has not been
Absorption,
absorbed.
Yeah,
There's an absorption issue. There's an issue here because I've never been in support of the housing levy because first and foremost it puts a huge strain on employers and it puts a huge strain on employees. And in my opinion, this should be a function of the private sector. It should not be the business of government. And what the government should do is to just implement policies where we ring-fence funding, say through the banking institutions, whereby you have a low interest rate and enable developers to deploy housing, and also a low interest rate that will enable mortgage takers to purchase the houses. So you create a primary and a secondary market that is robust. And we at the stock exchange, we at the in the capital markets ecosystem can develop products that can finance housing. For example, there's the recently floated Sukuk bond, which is Islamic funding, that is going to finance houses for the KDF. There's so much, if you look at green financing, climate action funding, the government can raise funds through climate action funds, it can raise funds through green bonds, can raise funds through Islamic finance, Sukuks, like we've seen recently. And so there are many ways it can be done. But I think now the fact that this has happened, it indicates that there's an absorption issue. And if there's an absorption issue, I think the honorable thing for them to do is to take this pressure off employers and employees and allow the market forces of demand and supply deal with the deficit in housing.
All right.
So the employees who have contributed to this and the employers, they feel cheated.
Yeah.
When you find that money is not going to housing, but it has gone to finance government expenditure, you feel cheated. I mean, the government said there's an urgent need for housing. Our people are suffering. So, and the president said, you are on a pay slip. There's a guy who's sleeping on the streets. We need to support your brother. This was the way the thing was packaged. And now you're keeping this money there, and you know from practice, the 80 billion they'll collect this year, probably by the time we are sitting here in another 2-3 months, the figure will be up to 50 billion, the amount that they'll have gone, that will have gone into. And the reasons have been, explained by Anthony very clearly. It's the cost of construction. Because what is the housing levy fund, by the way? It's not government building houses. It's government guaranteeing the uptake of those houses by those contractors. So if a contractor finds there's no money in it because the cost of building has gone up. Although you're getting the land for free, but the cost of construction has gone up.
Thank you.
Then you're not going to get somebody to buy it, so they're not going to get into it. I think there's a fundamental problem within the process that they're not dealing. That's why the money is being diverted now into the exchange.
Right, thank you. Gentlemen, I just want to give you 10 seconds, 20 seconds for closing remarks. I'm being hounded out of the studio. Beginning with you, Chair, CEO, Anthony.
So 4 key costs that we are discussing under the Business Reform Action Plan. Cost of taxation is not going up instead of going down. Cost of energy, we haven't seen any reprieve. Cost of and tenure of capital. And I'm happy the chairman is here. He should be giving us concession of, loans. And the regulatory costs. Those 4 costs, unmitigated, will kill the businesses in this country.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair.
I like the increased focus around this table on the need to look at final outcomes to the people. What does it, by the time it's delivered, how competitive is it? Does it add to improvements in the quality of living and low cost of living and so on? I think that focus is very, very important. And we can put to the test some of the things like these, the bills that are going before Parliament, and say, if passed, what do they imply? And that's very important. We need a robust discussion.
Right, thank you. Chair Kiprono.
Yeah. For me, I'm closing by saying 1.2 million CDSE accounts opened. If you haven't opened yours, open it now. There will be some listings coming. We are talking to government for a state-owned enterprise. We are talking to private sector. The markets are rising. This is the time to get in.
Right. And that's how you can find it also in the Business Daily. Right, Bilo, your closing remarks?
No, mine is on the finance bill. I want to urge the members of Parliament to rise to the occasion and shoot down some of the proposals in that, particularly those that have significant impact on the cost of living. Because really, Kenyans are feeling the impact of the high cost of living in the outside Nairobi station is really pretty bad. And I say we should not make the matter worse. They should rise to the occasion and tell the government, no, let us control expenditure. Let's not be taxing people more.
Thank you. Thank you. Gentlemen, I really appreciate your insight and input this morning. Very informative. And I hope you're all the wiser right now regarding, of course, the state of economy, also the finance bill, some of the issues raised as well. This is also what Kiprono Kitoni was raising. If you haven't opened your CDSC account, make sure you do. So we have 1.2 million share accounts. They are reactivated. So make sure also you do that for yourself. So there's something up the collective sleeves. That's why this is happening. Right? Something is cooking. We shall be looking at that maybe next week as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for your valued company. You've been watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime. On behalf of our panelists, we say thank you also for your valued company. My name is Dibala now. News Diary is up next.
For years, imported used cars from Japan and the West have offered the best car deals and dominated the Kenyan market. But if you didn't have enough to get one fresh off the boat, then locally used cars have offered an affordable route to vehicle ownership in Kenya.
When we're dealing in local cars, we are